midway through the WNBA season, and we're going to take a look at one of the most disappointing teams, that being the Las Vegas Aces. We'll take a look. Who's to blame for this? Is it a certain player, or is it the coach and new management structure, or what's going on, or is it just a matter of them needing time to gel and get their pieces in and together? Before we start, if you enjoy the content, then please consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a like. All right, let's get into this. Now, to be clear, I am not saying the Las Vegas Aces are a disaster. No, to be accurate, they're mediocre. They're currently 9th in the standings with a 9-11 record. Their net rating is currently 8th as they're minus 2.2. Now, I say that they're disappointing because you expect the Aces to be in the top 4 teams, one of those elite teams, and it hasn't happened. Now, labeling them as a disappointment might be unfair. I'm sure the Aces could make excuses and say, hey, A'ja Wilson has been out for 4 games so far this season. Her latest injury appears to be a wrist strain, so it seems like she will be back fairly soon, but that's to be confirmed. The other thing Aces fans would probably say is, with the introduction of Jewell Loyd, it has taken time to get her integrated in the lineup. They have a lot of new pieces, and that is what's caused their sluggish start. As well, is it really fair to call a team that has won 2 championships in 22 and 23 and then got knocked out by the eventual champion in 2024, the New York Liberty? Is it fair to call them a disappointment? Is it just natural decay of the dynasty as you have great players and they're going to leave via free agency, increase salaries, and that causes the decay? Well, for me, I do think it's fair to call them a disappointment, and I think it's self-inflicted because they have so many advantages and they haven't utilized them, and poor decisions have caused them to go in the realm of mediocrity. As I think it's important to remember, this team was actually put together by Dan Padover, who's now the GM of Atlanta, and Bill Laimbeer. They put this roster together, and you could argue, well, they tanked it to do it as they were able to pick up Kelsey Plum, A'ja Wilson, and Jackie Young in consecutive drafts as the #1 draft pick. But along with that, the Aces made some really good moves. So bringing in Chelsea Gray as a free agent from the Sparks. In addition, bringing in Becky Hammon to coach this team was a perfect fit as she introduced spreading out teams, making A'ja Wilson shoot from outside and taking threes, and opened up everything. It was an electrifying team that had an electrifying offense and defense, and really set them up for that first stunning year where it was clear that they were the best team in 2022. But from that point onwards, it's been poor decision after poor decision. So in that offseason, it started with the Derica Hamby trade for Candace Parker. On paper, that looked good, but in hindsight, it was a disaster because 2 things happened. One, Hamby called out how the Aces were cheating, which led to investigations and ultimately cost them draft picks. Not to mention, she gave the organization a black eye, saying that she was mistreated because she was pregnant. The other thing was, not only did they get the black eye for the whole Hamby situation, the upgrade to Candace Parker on paper did not work out, obviously, because Candace Parker had her stress fracture that ultimately had to have surgery, and it ultimately led to her retirement. And hard to say for sure. Nobody will ever know. It's all conjecture. But the dumping of Derica Hamby and how that was managed might have cost them another championship in the 2024 season, because they always, after that point, after dumping Hamby and Parker not working out, they struggled to match up against teams in their front courts because they didn't have a 4. Kia Stokes is a good backup, but she cannot play long minutes, and they get exposed when they do that. And yes, I know, oftentimes they would go with Alicia Clark and go small, but that's another issue. If you look at their salary cap in 24, so Wilson was on 227, Plum 200K, Gray on 196, Jackie Young on 169, and Clark on 110. Kia Stokes on 100K. That's their other advantage because they have this sponsorship deal with the Las Vegas Tourist Commission where each player gets to pocket an extra 100K that doesn't count towards the salary cap. So essentially they're getting an extra 1.2 million in salary cap when the WNBA salary cap is 1.4 million. So that's a ridiculous advantage, and you need to be able to put it together, especially those players being on that low salary. You need to be able to put together a better roster than that. And Aces fans might say, well, the Liberty are cheating just as bad as we are, and maybe they are. I wouldn't be surprised, that's for sure. But the difference in the finals and when they matched up in 24 was that the Liberty found Liani Fibic, and that was a matchup nightmare for the Aces, and that was the big difference. Roster construction, and that's the ongoing issue with the Aces. And the fall guy for this, or fall woman for this, after they got knocked out of the playoffs in 2024, was the GM, Natalie Williams. So her contract was not renewed, but it was never clear who was making the decision with the Aces. But what was clear, they didn't really replace her. What they've done is moved Nikki Fargas, who was in the front office, and called her the de facto GM, and she's essentially co-GM with Becky Hammon. There was an article on the Aces front office in the Sporting Tribune. The picture they were painting, now Hammon has more say on who the players that come in, and she has a better idea of what players fit her offense. This quote was in the article. It's been a collaborative effort, Fargas said. I think Becky has been very instrumental in identifying who she feels is going to fit her system. Tanya Halling, our VP of Operations, has been instrumental as well. And well, maybe Aces fans should be afraid, because Becky Hammon is a really good coach. There's no doubt about that. But the question is she the person you want to be making the call, the GM decisions? And after this offseason, it's questionable. Now, it was clear that Kelsey Plum wanted out of Vegas. The question is, did they do well in the trade that wound up landing them Jewell Loyd? Obviously, Jewell Loyd struggled early in the season. She's playing a little bit better now, but trading for Loyd was a strategic coaching decision. It wasn't a long-term visionary decision, because when you look at it, Jewell Loyd is on a max contract at $249K and an unrestricted free agent in 26. She's already been cored twice, so they don't control her rights. And so effectively they've traded Plum to get her, and they'll have her for 1 year at a max contract, where when you look at what the Sparks gave up to get Plum, they gave up 2 first-round picks, being the first pick in the 25 draft, which is number 2, in addition, Lee Yarou. And when you look at that, you wonder if the Aces would have been better off if a GM was running it and looking towards the future and would have said, no, we're not going all in on Jewell Loyd, as she struggled last year up in Seattle. We'll be better off for our future if we trade straight up with the LA Sparks, maybe get that 2 pick and take Citron or Kiki Ari-Effen. As well, they might have gotten LA to throw in Lee Yarou, the big China center, which would have given them better front court depth, as they could have paired her with Stokes and Asia Wilson. Not to mention the way LA treats their draft picks, you might have gotten them to throw in a first round 27 as well, which, knowing the Sparks, that might be of good value. But instead, the Aces got Loyd, who they can't core and could be gone next year if she doesn't re-sign. In addition, they gave up their number 1 pick in 26. But as often happens when the coach is the GM, they don't care about the future. I'm looking at you, James Wade, who had a great eye for talent, but then you went all in and traded all your draft picks away for Marina Mabrey. And I've got to say, it's starting to look that way for Becky Hammon as GM as well, as she recently traded away the Aces 2027 number 1 draft pick to the Dallas Wings for Nalissa Smith. Now, I imagine Dallas couldn't believe their luck, because they did get Lee Yarou from the Storm, as she was unhappy, I think, with her minutes or something was going on, so she requested a trade. They got her for a second-round pick, and then they were able to turn around and dump Nalissa Smith to the Aces and score a number 1 draft pick out of it. Smith is already... She's been given up on by the Fever, now the Dallas Wings, and the Aces give up a 1, which does not seem to be a real good move. It's interesting when the coach becomes the GM as well, because when you don't have final call on say and personnel, you can always say, man, I just don't have the right players. But when you're doing both, then it tends to become more frustrating. And there have been a number of times this season where Becky Hammon has been very annoyed with her team, calling out their effort, and you can see her level of frustration. Now, she's doing what all coaches do, which is complain about their defense. But if you look at the Aces defense during her tenure, their first year, they were giving up 102 points per 100. Her second year, 97.7 points per 100. Last year, it was 99.6, and this year, 101.6. So their defense isn't as good. It's better than it was her first year as the coach for the Aces, but more the drop off you see more dramatically is in offense. So her first year in 2022, the Aces had the best offense, number one, scoring 109 points per game. 2023, they scored 113 points per 100. And 2024, a little bit of a drop off at 106.1 per 100 possessions. And this year, it's fallen off a cliff. So they're scoring 99 points per 100 possession, which is 10th in the league. The prior years, they were 1 and 2 in offense. So they've dropped down all the way to 10th. And the player that's going to cop the most blame for this drop in offense is obviously going to be Jewell Loyd. She's currently averaging 10.9 points per game, 37% she's shooting from the floor. Her three-point shooting percentage is good. It's 37%, which lifts her effective field goal shooting percentage to 48%. Again, not terrible numbers, but it's not Kelsey Plum, who averaged 17 points last season and had an effective field goal shooting percentage of 56%. So no wonder their offense is down. Now, where from here? It's hard to envision the Aces getting back up into that elite top 4 level in terms of their defense and offense, but to be determined. Maybe they start to gel in the second half and Jewell Loyd starts to play better, but I'm not really counting on it. The other thing is they'll get Parker back, who's on maternity leave. That'll help their front court as well. Maybe that will give them extra juice. And then I guess the plan is, because they really have not taken advantage of their assets and gotten anything back. So they got nothing for Hamby, and it doesn't look like they've really done well in getting anything for Plum. But the good news, I guess, if you're an Aces fan, is there'll be a lot of free agents because of the collective bargaining agreement. And as we know, the Aces have an unbelievable advantage in free agency as they've got an extra $1.2 million in salary cap space because they're able to get that tourism deal where they're able to offer players extra money. So that might help them reload through free agency, to be determined. All right, now it's over to you. Your thoughts, your poison. It's all welcome. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great night.